to the Half Stacks with Paul and Steph.
Your go-to podcast for tech jabber.
On today's episode,
being a tech lead.
Hey Steph.
Hi, Paul.
And today we have Zach with us. And today we're going to be talking about tech lead. So we've all kind of been in the tech lead position at some point in our careers. And when it comes to the position, there's like a lot of responsibilities and things you have that go along with it. So first off, like, what are the responsibilities that come to your mind when it comes to tech leading?
I think it really depends on the team and like the needs of a project or a team. So it can vary a lot. But generally, it's kind of like, at least in my experience, has been a technical leader who is not exactly a manager, but they kind of do at least some activities that you might think of a manager doing, in addition to being like a technically competent contributor. So in that sense, it's kind of like an overlapping role. And like in my mind, ideally, it's the kind of thing where you have a little bit of influence without what is that? How do they phrase that? Like authority, influence without authority, something like that. Where, yeah, people don't necessarily like report to the tech lead, but the tech lead still organizes their work and gets things done. I don't know if it's kind of vague.
No, or completely agree. Like the other thing I kind of see it as is kind of being like a deflector, where like when, whether it's product or TPMs, technical project managers are coming in and saying, what's going on with this, you're kind of the one to be like fielding all those questions and trying to keep those people away from like your team so that way they could focus on the actual work. So it's kind of like a double duty of, you're on this project, but you're also kind of have all of these additional responsibilities to kind of look out for the team.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In that sense, a lot of times, if you're the tech lead, you're also accountable for the result, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of deflection and like distraction reduction is important.
Yeah. And it's also kind of, or you also need to take your technical experience into it because it's a case of, you kind of have to have some sort of sight of where this should, like, how everything should fit together, the different requirements that need to be built, and how to kind of get that done in the various stacks. So, Steph, did you have anything?
The biggest, I would say, responsibility or the hardest one is also making sure that the people you're leading feel like comfortable telling you when they don't know something. Because I've been that person where I didn't feel comfortable, and it's like, oh, had I just asked sooner, I probably would have solved my problem sooner, right? So oftentimes when I know that someone or some people look up to me for any reason, it's like, oh, I want to make sure I'm approachable to them so that they know that they can just come talk to me and, it'll be fine. But I think that's harder said than done. Like I can feel like, oh, I'm being approachable, and someone might feel like, oh, I'm not going to talk to her, right? So
yeah, but I think that has a lot to do with the culture you're working into, because like some that are kind of like heavily organized, it kind of makes it a little bit easier, but also kind of harder because there's more regiment to it. Whereas like looser, it feels a lot easier because it's more of a flow based of, you just kind of go get someone's time. It makes it a lot easier in those organizations to kind of be the lead.
it's often a curse to be a tech lead, just because you have, I mean, not necessarily in our company, but like in other companies, I've heard stories of like tech leads trying to outdo each other or outsmart each other. And you go and present a plan, and this other person on another team is like, oh, but why didn't you do it this way? So uh I just I think it varies across like cultures and companies.
Yeah, in heavily political cultures, it feels like it's more of a let me like shoot holes in your plan, just to kind of shoot holes in your plan, not to, because I'm trying to make your plan stronger, and that gets really, really hard to deal with.
Yeah, I think that that kind of thing is annoying, but it's easy to take that kind of position when you are not the responsible party too. So like it's much easier to like look at someone else's plan and point out everything that's wrong and what you would do instead. Um, but if you actually have to execute that plan and then see it through, it doesn't always like work out. So I used to be really bothered by that kind of stuff. Um, but usually now, if I'm presenting a plan that I wrote or developed, um, I usually won't share it until I feel like it's I can do it,
Mhm.
it's achievable, right? And that like I would feel comfortable seeing it through. Um, because otherwise, yeah, like people can like the peanut gallery is just like endless. Like everybody thinks they know the answer to everything all the time.
Seriously,
Yeah.
half the times it's like easy to come up with the idea of how to achieve something, but then the like the work is actually trying to sell it and be like, okay, yeah, like I've tried to think out all the different possibilities here.
Mhm.
Like that can be just as daunting.
How how do you as a tech lead not do that to other people? Like, there's always going to be people more junior than you that are going to put up plans that aren't ideal. How do you go not just shooting holes into their plan and like you try to come across in a way where it's like I'm actually trying to help you, not just like tear your plan down.
I think a lot of that goes into the way you present your like the way you challenge them or the way that you ask about the thing you're concerned about. Um, but also has to do with like your attitude.
Yeah.
So if your attitude is, oh, this person is inexperienced and I'm going to show them how experienced I am by asking all these questions that they're like rhetorical questions I don't really care about the answer to, then you're doing it wrong and you shouldn't do that. Um, but there might be aspects where when you're reading through a plan or you're talking with someone and you can tell they just haven't even thought of an entire aspect of something. Usually I just present it as a question. You say, oh, well, what happens when this thing occurs? Or have you thought about, you know, changing this because this bad thing could happen? And maybe they did think about it and they'll explain it.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe they didn't think about it and then they have some work to do. But yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the way it's presented, which
Yeah,
can be hard to do, right? Like not at least being myself, uh, I'm kind of consider myself a more shy kind of person. And so like learning how to communicate in a way where you get your point across without kind of hurting someone's feelings or like making them feel bad or being condescending can be hard work because it's just like an uncomfortable space to be in for some people.
Yeah.
or at least for me, like I know when it comes to like meetings and like asking questions in that space, I feel like I'm more like to the point and direct about it, and it comes off as maybe a more negative way of approaching it than I mean. Um, and so usually like what I try to do is if I feel like I pushed a little too far on something, like I'll get the person's time one on one, later on and be like, this is why I brought this up. This is kind of like how I approach these problems, just to make sure that, we're both on the same page, and it wasn't like I was trying to dig into your, idea and like prove that it was wrong.
Yeah, I can see how that could help. However, it goes back to how do you remain, like, how do you appear approachable to a group of people when you do the mitigation in private, right? Like, if a group of people perceived you as like, oh, that person just shot holes into this person's plan and tried to whatever, when you mitigate it in private, they don't see that part, right? So then you'll remain as unapproachable in some ways when you
No, or usually when I do that, I actually call myself out of, I didn't mean to come off as this. If that was how I did, I apologize. But this is, what I was trying to drive at, and are you getting, or like, are we on the same page?
so what skills make a great tech lead? I can answer first while you guys think. I think some of the best skills I've seen a tech lead have is to be able to explain something without implied knowledge, right? Like one of my biggest pet peeves around working with people is when they talk to me like I should already know something. And it's really hard to navigate around that because it's like you inherently feel like, well, I shouldn't ask because it feels like I should already know this, but I don't know it. So I'm going to ask. And some people react really well and they're like, oh, well, just it's this, right? And other people are like, how do you not know this? And then you just feel awful for the rest of the day.
I'm feeling awful right now because that's pretty much how I approach things. Or I don't know, or like I kind of approach it from like, I assume that you know something and that you're going to ask me a question if you don't know it. Which maybe not be the best way of approaching things.
I mean, I do the same thing. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like all perfect or anything. I'm just saying, like, I'm thinking of it as
Yeah,
what
you got it.
what skill would I appreciate in a tech lead if I were being led, right? So
Yeah.
I agree. I think that that's a super valuable skill to have. Sometimes it's difficult because if you have to explain all aspects of something like layer by layer, that can be really time consuming. But generally, I think when you're talking with someone, if they're being open, you can kind of tell whether they understood what you explained, or if they have a question but they're not asking, and you might be able to draw them out and say, oh, like you can mention it in passing. You say, oh, this thing is blah blah blah, and can I test the water? And they might say, oh yeah, I know, or oh thank you, like I have no idea. Um, but yeah, I think um, to the kind of original question, um, one skill that I think is really valuable is having the ability to look at the bigger picture. I think it's really easy when you get an assignment or something, right? And you say, okay, I know I need to do this very specific thing. I'm going to write this code. I'm going to write this design, do this thing. And you just kind of like get right in there and you can focus on that. And if you have a team of people that are just really focused on little things, those things might all get done, but they might not fit together at the end, right? Or one might take a lot longer than the other. And so really to like make things cohesive, you need someone who can zoom out and take a stock of like all those things and fit them together and see where things are. Like this part's ahead, this part's behind. Maybe we need to change something in the middle to like make it work for now. And in the future, we'll do this to fix it, just so that things keep moving along. Because otherwise, I think just innocently, people will just continue to work on their little thing, right? That's a natural tendency to just be focused on that thing. And you feel good about that because like I'm given the assignment, I'm working on the assignment, I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. But sometimes like it's good to have someone who can really keep track of everything. Um, and as I work with other technical leaders, like it's that same pattern, but like at a larger scope every time. And I always wonder, how can they do it? Like, so I don't think there's any end to that like skill. It's just like gets a bigger and bigger scope, but it's super important.
You think it gets bigger scope, but also higher level? Like, you're not going to know the nitty-gritty of everything.
Yeah, but I think at the same time, really strong technical leaders can navigate through those layers. So they might spend a lot of their time at the high level, but if you ask them something like much deeper, they can go into it um, and really explain, oh, this is what I mean. This is how this would work. And maybe they could show you the code that they would write or whatever, right? Um, that's when I think someone who has that really strong technical capability is important.
Kind of also going along those lines, like the one skill that I think of is like risk management of, kind of being aware of not only that broad picture, but also like the potentials of, hey, this thing's falling behind. And so therefore timeline's going to be messed up, and kind of communicating out of, hey, we might miss this because of this, are there trade-offs you want to make, or do we stay the path? Like, and kind of negotiating with your partners of kind of what the solution is that fits with our needs. Or again, because I take it back to that whole thing of being the deflector of, if you don't have that conversation, that means that conversation's going to someone else. And, being in the lead position, it feels like the most appropriate person to have it is that, or you. So do you think like the skill set is universal, or is it kind of one of those things where it has to like take different forms depending on like the project, company, people you're working with?
I don't think it's universal. I think there's the needs of a project or a team vary.
Yeah.
And if you are the tech lead for that team or that project, your skills will either complement that need or like there will be areas where you need to grow to fulfill that need. Over time, I've worked on bigger and bigger projects that had larger scope or they're just more complex. And so each time for me, that project was the most complicated thing I ever worked on. And I thought, like, oh, this is really hard or really complicated. And these are the things that are hard about it. And as time has gone on, I've continued to get larger and larger projects with more complexity and more scope. And that's always the hardest project I'm working on. And I can look back and say, oh, that thing I thought was really hard, actually, like, it's not that hard, but at the time or for that scope, it was hard. And the things that I needed to do, whether I needed to like work with people or work with code or, design something to solve a problem, each of those things was the hardest part at a given time. And so I only needed like certain skills to fulfill those needs at that time. But now where I'm at, I would say, yeah, I'm currently working on the hardest and largest project I've ever worked on. And the needs of this project are way different from uh, any previous project. Um, so, for example, the project that I'm working on now, it touches thousands of code repositories, tens of thousands of endpoints for our web applications, and requires a lot of cross-team collaboration and alignment, which doesn't sound like a technical problem as much as previous projects where it was like, oh, this is just a really complex system, and I need to make sure that the integrity of the data is maintained, and I will like do this, and I'll ask these people to do these parts, these types of things. Uh, that doesn't require you to like coordinate with other teams or these types of things. So over time, like I've had to vary my skill set and change it to fulfill the needs of my new projects.
Do you think that your experience like led you up, or how to say this, like, do you think you could do what you do now if you didn't have like some of the other experiences that you've had before, right? Like,
Probably not. I think it's kind of like an incremental progression. It just comes with experience, right? Like the more different projects you work on that have different needs, you're going to develop some set of skills that you at the time just might think, oh, I just need to do this to get this thing done. But in the future can become useful because you have something to reference. Oh, I did this before and it didn't work, so I'm not going to do that again. Or I did this before and it did work, and I'm going to, get better at it. I definitely feel like, uh, yeah, it's like something that I've built up a set of skills over time.
Yeah, it feels like to me, it kind of just like the extension of like your developer toolbox. I guess just case of you have a different skill set that you have to kind of implement differently for each project. Like I feel like some things are kind of built into the base of it. Of for every project you're going to use certain things, but there's other parts of it where it feels like you very much have to customize it to what the project actually is delivering and like who you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
but let's say you're new, right? Like it's your first job as a software engineer, and let's say that you joined a team that is touching a lot of applications, right? It's like you're touching the foundation of your whole company pretty much. Are they at a disadvantage because they don't have like a single app kind of experience? Like, because you don't fundamentally understand how, these applications work. So therefore you're sort of like put at a disadvantage because you're expected to understand how most applications work or how the general system works, right?
To me, I think that's the position of a manager to know that this person is new and you put or like if you're putting them in the lead position for something like that, then that means you need to put a strong team around them that is going to support them through this because anyone like whether you're stepping into a new tech lead position or just new on a team, like you need that support to kind of build the skill set for your product. And so the manager should be well aware of that and basically, form a team around you that is there to kind of guide you through. Like, again, like, I don't think you need a large technical skill set to be a tech lead because a lot of it is organization and keeping track of requirements and timelines. Um, and that kind of feels somewhat universal. Um, so that, you know, as you're learning that you don't need to be at the top of your tech you know career, um but the people around you hopefully have been in a lead position before and can help guide you through it. Like I wouldn't just throw someone who's never been a tech lead and have them lead a brand new group of engineers. Like that just seems like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like most engineering answers, it depends. Uh, so like if I was a hiring manager and I hired a new person for this team, if I was specifically looking for a lead, right, then I would try to hire someone who either was a lead before or has a strong desire to take that kind of position. Um, but yeah, I think I definitely agree with what you're saying, Paul, which is that for anyone who's new, you really need to like be integrated into a team and get a feel for like how that team works or doesn't work, right? Before you can just like show up and be the lead. um, I think just being the new person and being the lead is always a challenging thing. So unless uh, you are a like you intend to be a lead from the start, definitely there's an uphill battle to kind of build that familiarity and the relationships with people that you're going to be working with, right? Um, because if you're in the position of you have to kind of organize their work and ask them to do things and check in on them, it's always good to have a good relationship with those people versus like being a stranger where like that relationship kind of feels cold.
Yeah. So when you're a lead, let's say, and there is a new person, do you automatically feel it's your responsibility to be there for that person? Or does it depend on the context in which they're working?
I mean, personally, I think that if you're a team lead, right, then
Yeah.
it is sort of in part your responsibility to create the culture you want, right? So if you want a culture of people who are collaborative or that work closely together, uh, and you have a new person joining, you want to kind of influence their behavior to be that way, right? For whatever outcome you want. And I think sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Like some people are easier to influence than others, or they're just not comfortable in general, or they're more comfortable, or whatever, right? People are different. But as the tech lead, right, it's going to benefit you and the whole team if you can influence um, the culture in that way. So I feel like newcomers are more easier to influence because they don't necessarily have a context for the culture. And so you can sort of create a culture uh, that way. It doesn't always work though. Yeah, I've had varied success doing that.
Yeah, because to me, like the or a lot of times it feels like it's more of blending into cultures. Um, it, or I feel very rarely have I been able to kind of like create the culture. The only time was like when I was working for a startup and it was like everyone was joining it right around the same time. But otherwise, I've always kind of like joined other teams, and so the culture was well formed. Um, and so I kind of have to kind of learn the culture first and kind of mold that or mold yourself to it, and kind of see what fits for you and what you kind of want to maybe evolve on or evolve the culture around you.
I think it can be challenging in either position, like joining a new or different culture when you're very used to something else can be hard, right? Because you're like, okay, well, how do I mold myself to be fitting in this culture? And then if it's really not yourself, then you're just like, ah, right? But then also as a tech lead, it's like you're essentially an influencer, except that not on the internet. You're just an influencer on your team. And like you have to be, I guess, brave enough to like just spout things out and hope people listen to you, right? I mean, it's also like by example and all that, but people have to like you in some sort of
There is an aspect of influence which is non-technical in nature, right? It is like your ability to communicate an idea or a change that you want to make, whether it's in a project or in a culture or something, and then get buy-in, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of non-technical aspect, the leadership aspect, um, which is sometimes very challenging. But some people really have a gift in that area, right? Like maybe they've been trained to excel in those kinds of interactions, or they just have a kind of natural tendency to be able to influence people and convince people and do these kinds of things.
Yeah, because like for me, I feel like out of work, like I have no influence whatsoever. Like there is no like leadership aspect. But then as soon as you put me in the context of work, it's, my need to get things done like kicks in. And so like all of a sudden I can develop that skill set and be like, okay, this is what needs to get done. Like, and kind of work with everyone to be like, okay, this is how I could see it. Is that, what you would do? And it gets a lot easier to kind of be in that position.
Yeah. I would say I'm the opposite of you. I'm not an influencer at work. I'm not even an influencer out of work, but I think I'm more outspoken out of work, right? When I'm not worried so much about the perception of like the things I say. Uh, but maybe that's why I am the way I am. Who knows?
How has coding changed after being a tech lead? Like, do you feel the same about like the development side, or do you see it somewhat differently? Because for me, like or kind of with my background, I've kind of been in the situations where you're kind of stuck in meetings for half the day to kind of like figure out requirements and what the process is going to be like. And so that to me changes coding a lot, where it feels like you have to be very aware of time and effectiveness of what you can get done, and what you kind of need to be like, no, this is something my team can get taken care of. And so kind of breaking up the work becomes so important because of that.
I would say that as I've been given more technical leadership roles, um, the amount of time I have to do like heads down coding work is definitely reduced. So that means that when I do have time to code, I need to really know what I want to do and how I want to do it. So to kind of make that time the most effective, uh, however much time it is. I would say that I don't generally have a lot of meetings, but I definitely have more than maybe my peers who are not tech leads, that are just uh, more primarily focused on execution. How has it changed though? I really enjoy programming, writing code. I think for me, it's more of like a creative process. Like uh, I still think it's just amazing that we can type words into a text file and then make a machine do something. I don't think like the novelty of that hasn't worn off on me. And let's see how long I've been programming for.
Zach's about to show his age.
Almost 30 years, I think.
Oh man, he's like 50, man.
not not professionally, but I started young, and yeah, it's just amazing to me that you can do that. So I have this kind of special soft spot for being able to write code. Like I enjoy it a lot. So when I don't have the opportunity or time to do that, then it can be frustrating for sure. Um, but that's why I think you have to focus on your goals. So like when I'm at work, my goal is to accomplish some work thing, right? Like it's not to just program. Like I can do that for fun. If I want to just program, I can take some of my own time and do that if I feel like I'm not doing it enough. But I think the objective is to, get a project done or deliver something, or prove a concept that is or is not going to work. And you can get that done through delegating to other people, right? You give them the enjoyment of the programming, and you reap the enjoyment of accomplishing the goal, because you can fan out. Like generally, you're going to have more than one person that you can delegate work to, and so now you can get more done, um, because you have multiple people executing in parallel.
You do you think it's worth the trade-off? Like, money aside, like obviously you'll get paid more to be a leader, but do you think it's worth the trade-off if you love programming to become a tech lead that codes less?
I don't know. That's not really for me to say. I think that in my experience, what I thought of as a tech lead when I wasn't one, I guess, was different from what it actually is. So you think, at least I'll share my experience. So I used to think that a tech lead was just, it's like a programmer that's just getting really good. Like over time, their programming knowledge is so strong that there's no problem they can't overcome. Um, and I think that's like a sort of romanticized idea of that role. Um, the reality is, it's probably just the person who is organized and makes sure that things get done. Like they may not necessarily even be like the strongest coder. You might have other coders who are on their team that are much more like technically capable, but they don't excel, in staying organized or communicating or these types of things. So it's kind of like the person who can fill that void ends up being the tech lead, whether they choose to be or not. Um, so for someone who wants to, like, they just really want to do programming only and focus on that, they're probably not going to gravitate towards a tech lead role. In my case, uh, it's not like I set out to go, oh, I'm going to be the tech lead. I will do these things that I have read about that I'm supposed to do that. Um, it's mostly born out of like being frustrated. Like I'll be working on something and it's not, the things aren't organized and I get irritated about it. And then I'm the person who gets irritated the most. And so I start speaking up, and then people go, oh, this person has an opinion. Let's just let him do it. Right. And now I'm the tech lead. Uh, so in some ways, like maybe I brought it upon myself, but it wasn't like I like set this clear goal to like be the leader. I've had to develop the leadership part. Like you can't just lead because you're frustrated, which I have learned is not like a winning strategy, but it is sometimes like enough motivation to get you over your hurdles, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice some of my programming time if these things are more organized or I can achieve the outcomes I want to achieve. So like I'm willing to do that trade-off.
Yeah, or the other thing I thought of is have how I kind of entered it was in a weird way of like when I first started, like I did a lot of PR reviews because one, the like senior developers didn't have the time to do their PR reviews. And so I was like, okay, I can help out here, but it was also like to develop my skill set to be to understand, what was going on and like what other people were coding. And so because I kind of was like doing this, they were like, "Do you want to lead a project?" I was like, "I don't really want to, but if you need me to, I guess I can." And then kind of had to figure everything out from there. And so, like, yeah, I think a lot of it is just kind of learning on the fly when it comes to it, because like or I don't know, maybe there are a lot of, or there are engineers who are like great at both. I kind of feel like it's not a natural fit, and it kind of is something you do have to like learn those skills.
If you were asked out of the blue, will you be a tech lead on this project? Right? Would you automatically say yes because people see you as a tech lead already? Or would you have to think about it? Or classic staff answer, does it just depend on the project?
I think sometimes you don't have a choice, right? They
Yeah.
say we
Right,
need
but
we need
if
this
you
thing
did
to
have
get
the
done,
choice,
and you're the person who has been chosen to do it. So go forth and do it.
but if you did have the choice, right? It's like if it was a super interesting project and you had the choice to say yes or no, it's like, would you rather lead this project or would you rather execute this project, right? Which one would you choose? Red wire or blue wire?
I generally would always choose the lead position. I just enjoy the people aspect of it. I don't really mind being like the focus of a TPM. I could generally like deal with them and the stress of it. And I do well at the negotiating portion for the most part. So like I kind of enjoy the role. And so I would always usually say yes, unless the project was something where I was like, no, 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 I don't really want to be involved with this. This is not either a feature or tech stack that I'm interested in working on.
I think I'm mostly aligned with that. For me, it comes back to the same uh, set of challenges that got me into being a tech lead to begin with, which is that sometimes if you're just working on a project and your role is to just execute, um, you either have to be like completely happy with that uh, direction and design, and you're building it, um, or not care, right? Like, like I'm just here to program. I do whatever, and I might do it really well, and I don't care whether I think it's a good design or not. That's not what I'm being asked to do, right? So I'm just going to do what I'm being asked to do. For me, uh, I think it all ties into like I feel like the programming aspect is like this creative process. The solution to a problem is sort of a creative process, so there's a lot of subjectivity to it, and so I probably like overinvest myself into things because I care about them, um, and so uh, at least being the tech lead, you can have a little bit more of a say over how things go.
Mhm.
Um, Not always. Like sometimes there are factors you can't control or other things that you're asked to do and you just have to make it work. But at least in the lead position, you can make more calls about things. And for me, like there's a kind of satisfaction or I feel like at peace with the thing. Um, which is more it's like easier to deal with versus like, oh, I'm working on this stupid thing and I think it's dumb and I don't even know why we're building this, but I'm gonna do it because it's my job. Like I don't like to live in that zone.
Yeah, that tends to make life less fun. So try to avoid that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to not be the tech lead and have that sort of influence? Or is that kind of wiggling yourself into that tech lead role? I think we've generally have said like if we don't agree with something, we should just speak up, right? Regardless of what your role is, right? And and so it's like, can you just be the person that speaks up and says, why are we doing this? Can we do it this way? Without actually being a formal lead.
Having been in that position before, because like how I saw it was I was trying to support my tech lead. Like, and so I was like, I think you're kind of missing a piece here. And it was someone who was or didn't have as much experience, and so they ended up feeling like they needed to like let me take over, and I was like, no, that's not the point. The point was like you just trust the people around you. Like, I'm here to help you, but they had so convinced themselves like that they couldn't do it that they stepped down anyway, and like that felt like crap. And it was like that was the exact opposite of what I was trying to do. And so it was a big learning lesson to me to be, or to make sure that the person knows that, this isn't a knock against you. This is just a figuring out the best solution.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with what we talked about earlier, which is like, how you challenge someone or how you share an idea. And that's going to vary from person to person, right? Like you might know the person who you're trying to give the suggestion to. You might know that they don't have a lot of experience, right? Um, and I think the danger in it, in the original question, which is like, if you share your point of view on something, are you sort of assuming the leadership role? I think it can be, it's like a slippery slope. It's like, what is that? There's like a phrase where they say like, if you feed an animal or something, now it's gonna come back, or I don't know the actual phrase, but it's that kind of thing, right? Where um, it, it might occur to you that there is a gap or a void, and by speaking out, you end up filling that void, and people will recognize that. And so, uh, like the more often you do it, people will start maybe to expect it, or they won't be surprised, and they'll associate like that type of, oh, this person has an opinion, or this person knows something that I don't. And so over time, you kind of become that person. But it depends, right? Like if it's just like you just feel comfortable to speak out about something once, then do it, right? I don't think that's a big deal. But more and more, like you might start feeling more comfortable doing that, right? And then you continue to do it, and people sort of just think you're a lead of some kind.
So
So it's like it's not bad, but it's like there is a risk, I guess, if your goal is to like not be a lead at all. Uh,
it's like stay quiet.
you have like I don't know. I mean, it depends.
So that's the key, huh?
So can someone be given a tech lead role then? Because like people do have to have some level of respect in you for you to be successful in leading them, right? So it's like you almost cannot just delegate a tech lead role. You have to know like, oh, this person is respectable, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it's almost like a lead by something. Yeah.
it's a big lead by example. Like I think you kind of have to prove yourself before you can. Like I don't think it's a case of you can just kind of step into the role. Like I think there's some amount of proving beforehand to kind of say, I have the technical experience, because you do need a technical background. You don't may not need like full strength, but you have to, understand requirements and how to turn that into code. And if you can't do that, you're going to struggle as a tech lead.
Yeah. So being a tech lead is more of a mindset than a role in a way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
I
and
would
I think
agree.
I think what I feel like you're getting at is that the tech lead role gets assigned to a person, but it usually takes a group of people to kind of make that arrangement work, right?
Yeah.
It definitely helps if you know that person and respect that person, um, because otherwise it's like a stranger that I think it's just a natural tendency. Like you sort of want them to, you want to feel comfortable that they know what they're talking about or that their direction is strong or correct. And so it's easy to like be critical of people you don't know, or that like people were assigned to a role and you had no say, and now it's like, oh, this person's in charge and I'm going to do whatever they say or whatever. Um, that varies a lot, like from team culture and company culture, like how successful that is, right? But like I
Yeah.
think for a healthy culture, you would want to support someone, right? Because there's also the aspect of like, oh, the tech lead, maybe we want to give someone the opportunity to
Yeah.
develop these type of skills, so we'll ask them to be the lead, even if like they're not there,
Yeah.
right? Because otherwise, you may not have the opportunities or the kind of personality or whatever to develop that skill organically. But that's where like the support of your teammates or your people you're working with helps a lot. I watched a talk called "Being the Glue" by Tanya Riley, and it talks about a lot of the non-technical aspects of being a lead. And I think it's a really good talk. The slides are online, available uh, on Tanya's blog. Yeah, it covers a lot of the aspects that have nothing to do with code, which is like, oh, I noticed that this thing was not organized, or this thing is falling behind, so I'm going to help this person make sure they get their work done. And so it's kind of this interesting trade-off between I'm helping all of my peers succeed, which moves like the whole project or group forward. Um, but a lot of those things aren't visible. Like from my output, my individual output, like
Right.
my little green boxes on GitHub are not green, right? Like, but everybody else's are. And so it covers a lot of those interesting aspects of being a tech lead that maybe are not obvious to someone at the beginning,
Yeah.
but are super important. Um, but they're hard to quantify. But I thought it was a really good talk.
That's
So if you
like
haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's called Being the Glue, I think.
so that's like when managers are saying like you should be a force multiplier as
Yes.
you grow up in levels, grow up in levels. I'm growing up. I'm not a kid software engineer anymore.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed. Yeah. It definitely is that type of thing.
So I think we've had a great discussion on being tech lead. And Zach, thank you for your time. We'll see
Yeah.
y'all
Thank you
next week.
both. This
all
was
right.
fun.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.